January 17th, 2021. Drew Brees retires from the NFL. Drew Brees was the Saints quarterback since 2006 and has been the face of the franchise for over a decade at that point. And now he's walking out. The Saints move forward in their quarterback pursuit and they land on one Jameis Winston. Now, in hindsight, this was a terrible idea. At the time, it was a terrible idea. I wasn't too mad at the prospect of Jameis Winston being the Saints quarterback. All right, I knew exactly what he was going to give us. 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions. It wasn't going to be anything that crazy. It wasn't going to be anything that, blew my mind. It was going to be the exact thing that we expect from Jameis Winston. And we'll get into the 2021 season. But first, let's talk about the 2021 NFL Draft. In the first round, the New Orleans Saints take Peyton Turner. And it's safe to say that this was a terrible draft pick. This guy turned out to be a massive bust and pretty much wasted our time. Now, one may ask, well, why did y'all draft a defensive end? That's something I want to know. Well, that's because earlier in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Saints tried to draft a defensive end once again, who also ended up being a massive bust. One Marcus Davenport. Now, if you're an NFL watcher, you watch the NFL a lot, you may know that the 2018 draft is a very infamous draft. And you see, it's infamous for one humongous reason. All the way down at the 32nd pick, the future multi-time MVP Lamar Jackson fell. For what reason? No reason at all. Teams just didn't draft him. Now, at the time, I wouldn't tell you that the New Orleans Saints needed to draft a quarterback. But considering that they didn't need to draft a defensive end either, I'm going to be a little bit arrogant here. Because I already knew the Marcus Davenport pick was a bad pick. Because what were we drafting Marcus Davenport for? Well, in my opinion, we were drafting him to replace Cameron Jordan. But see, there's one massive problem. If we were going to spend a pick on replacing a position at need that we needed to replace, it would be of the utmost importance to replace the biggest position on the field, the most important position in the league, in a position where our top guy is deteriorating very slowly, but surely is regressing from what he used to be to what he is now. I'm not going to say 2018 Drew Brees was cause for everybody to immediately look for a new quarterback on the Saints staff. But all I'm saying is we were already shopping for his future replacement. We had guys like Teddy Bridgewater, Taysom Hill, and Jameis Winston. We already spent time shopping for his option. So here in the first round, I would say it wouldn't be too insane if we just drafted his future replacement. A lot may be opposed to it, but really, what's the danger? Especially when we were already drafting a replacement for somebody else on the roster. And again, who ironically is still on this roster to this day. Even then, if we were just trying to bolster up the defense, we could have traded up to draft a guy like Vita Vea, make moves, actually do something. But instead, we sat there, drafted Marcus Davenport, allowed Lamar Jackson to go 30 seconds. And you want to know where he went? He went to a team who didn't even necessarily need a quarterback at the time. So again, don't come to me with all this, you guys didn't need a quarterback bullshit. Because quite frankly, it won't work. But I went too far back. Let's go back to 2021 when we spent a pick on Peyton Turner. I would say, to be fair, there weren't many other options available. And especially with what we know now about the 2021 NFL draft and the quarterbacks within it, I think it's safe to say that we dodged major bullets not drafting quarterback in this draft. We didn't have the option to, but I'm just glad we did it. But alongside Peyton Turner, we got guys like Pete Warner, Paulson Adebo, and Ian Book in the fourth round. Ian Book, who ended up not even being on the roster now. So yeah, we 2 for 4 with draft picks because Peyton Turner and Ian Book. But Paulson Adebo was a good pick. He is no longer on the roster. Despite being one of the better corners in the league, somehow, some way, the Saints let him walk because we're insanely broke. But let's start the 2021 season. In the 2021 season, right, with the starting quarterback of Jameis Winston, who, he had a cool little start there. I'm pretty sure we started off the season like 2-0. But he went down with an injury in Tampa Bay, which led to us having a 9-8 season. Again, we didn't have this, amazing season, but the season left a lot on the table and a lot that, hey, maybe we can build something off of this. So in the following 2022 NFL Draft, the Saints select Chris Olave, Trevor Penning, and Alontae Taylor in the second round. Now, I'm going to say this. This is a great draft right here. This was a magnificent draft. There is nothing I hate about this draft. all these players are still on the roster, and I would say all these players have turned into impact players, especially Alontae Taylor in the second round. He turned into a amazing player, and obviously we know what Chris Olave is, but he was the obvious pick. We wanted Chris Olave from the beginning. So then we go into 2022 with our quarterback being Andy Dalton. And yeah, I'm just gonna say this right now. We went 7-10. It wasn't a very good season. The 2022 season was very uneventful for the Saints. The Saints gave up no excitement. They weren't entertaining to watch. However, they did give us one thing, and that is the introduction to wide receiver Rashid Shaheed. So congratulations, 2022 Saints. You did a good thing. The 2023 draft, by far, in my opinion, the draft that cooked us the most. In 2023, the Saints drafted Bryan Bresee with the first round pick. They also drafted Isaiah Folksy in the second round, Keandre Miller in the third round, Jake Haener in the fourth, and another linebacker, but that's not too important. My biggest problem and concern is the pick of Bryan Bresee in the first round. Missed out on guys like Nolan Smith, Byron Young, and DeMarvion Overshown. Now, you could say the Overshown pick, it's a little bit of a reach, if you want to say, even though he turned out great. He wasn't, that crazy of a prospect, because he literally went like shortly after Bryan Bresee, he went in the draft. So it's not like this would have been a crazy reach. But Byron Young absolutely would have been a good pick, and it would have been understandable at the time. So I just don't understand why Bryan Bresee, I don't understand the Saints' obsession with drafting first round D linemen, none of them which being a name brand. At this point, we're just drafting guys, just to draft guys. We're just praying that we hit a crazy hit. And the craziest thing about the 2022 draft is almost everybody ended up being absolutely atrocious. The only guy who I will even give any breathing room from this draft is Keandre Miller. And even then, it is a very short lease that he has. Considering the most recent pick, Devin Neal, and I'm kind of hoping that Neal kind of takes a spot, but it is what it is. But another important part of this 2023 draft and 2023 offseason is that the New Orleans Saints signed Derek Carr to be the quarterback. Now, Derek Carr, the interesting guy. At the time of the signing, I would say we gave him too much money. Entirely too much money. Way too much money for what he was. But it wasn't a bad idea. In concept. In 2023, the Saints, they went 9-8. Didn't have too crazy of a season. However, they did in the last 5 games 4-1. So they gave everybody something to look forward to, especially with that last game at Atlanta. That's just the icing on the cake right there. That is perfect. That is what we want to see from the New Orleans Saints. So going into 2024 draft, it was obvious the holes that we were supposed to cover. Get an O-line and shore up the defense. You can't go wrong with those picks, and I will say the 2024 draft satisfied me enough. With the picks of Fuaga and McKinstry in the first 2 rounds, that is completely fine. Where I will push back is the 5th round. The 5th round pick and the current starting quarterback, Spencer Rattler. Now look, I understand a lot of people, they're Spencer Rattler fans. I'll get to him later. But I would have so much, and even at the time, I would have preferred Joe Milton. Don't get me wrong, Spencer Rattler was kind of a guy where I forgot he existed after he left Oklahoma, Then we just kind of drafted him. I was like, oh yeah, Spencer Rattler. He was kind of cool, he's kind of a cool dude. He fell off heavily. But sure, Spencer Rattler, yeah, in the 5th round, he could be something. We'll get to that in a minute. Real quick, let's go to the 2024 NFL season. Now, the head coach for the New Orleans Saints for the past couple of years had been Dennis Allen, and that is because Sean Payton retired and left, and then we had to trade him to Denver because he wanted to coach for Denver because he didn't want to coach for life of Drew Brees because he was bailed out by Drew Brees for most of his career. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Mr. Dennis Allen should have been fired after the 2023 season when he turned his back on the roster, but somehow he still had employment. So now we're going to the 2024 season, and we start off 2-0. We get off to a fiery start. I mean, this start had everybody fooled. Everybody believing the Saints were some real contenders. And then after starting off 2-0, we proceeded to go 3-12 for the rest of the season with a mixture of Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler in the starting lineup. Spencer Rattler just did not play good. He didn't play good at all. But for some reason, this was enough to trick enough people into thinking that we were looking good for the future. And all we had to do was trust the process. I don't know what process, because the process didn't make sense. For some reason, we were still drafting and building the team like we had a quarterback and a good team as a whole. This team was being built as if we were just, trying to kick the can down the road. We were contenders this year and we're going to contend next year. That's the type of drafting we've been doing. And none of that solidified that more than in the 2025 NFL draft. Now, that's where I get a little mad because Derek Carr retires, right? He's retired. He's no longer a quarterback, which means the only quarterbacks we had on the roster were a 5th round pick, Spencer Rattler, Taysom Hill, who was injured with a torn ACL at the age in his mid-30s on a very heavy contract that we can't get rid of, and Jake Hayner. Any reasonable front office would have drafted a quarterback right now. Not even to win games, just to solidify their jobs. They would draft a quarterback to give themselves a chance to build around something. And considering how advertised this draft class was, how deep this draft class was claiming to be in quarterbacks, and only time will tell how true that was. But with the amount of quarterbacks that were in this draft, the need the Saints had for a quarterback, the fact that they had the 9th overall pick, and most of the guys ahead of them did not need to draft a quarterback. They would have their pick of the litter at quarterback, which means for sure they would draft one. There's no reason they wouldn't. No! What the fuck? Who the fuck is that? Oh my God.
God is good.
Y'all niggas did not just pass up on Shedeur Sanders.
Nigga, you are Derek Sanders, you are a Pittsburgh Steeler. That's all I gotta say, bruh.
You niggas passed up on Shedeur Sanders for what? Who's our quarterback? Spencer fucking Rattler? I don't care what your opinion is on Shedeur Sanders. We passed up on the most accurate quarterback in college football. One of the most prolific leaders in college football that wasn't already drafted, because Cam Ward, in my opinion, was the best leader in the class. Second best was Shedeur. So now that Cam Ward was off the board at the first pick, Shedeur Sanders was a no-brainer. There is no reason not to draft him. But the Saints just did it. They drafted an offensive lineman. So I assumed Shedeur Sanders was gone. He was off the board. He wasn't available. He wasn't an option. Next quarterback drafted was Jackson Dart. So now we move on to the second round. Now in the second round, I assume we were just trusting in Spencer Rattler. So I would say draft a cornerback like Will Johnson to go alongside Kool-Aid McKinstry and Alontae Taylor, and just proceed to go young with this DB room, because we were already staring in that direction. And with the fact that we let Paulson Adebo go in the offseason, we traded Marshawn Lattimore, we very much needed help at the corner position. But if we were to draft a quarterback, surely it would be Jalen Milroe, Alabama's quarterback. A guy who's proven himself in a decently run offense against high levels of competition. It just makes sense, right? If we were going to draft a second round quarterback, especially when considering that we're not too close to contending. So why not draft a young quarterback who's 22 years old and just build up something for him to play with? Let him learn, let him train. Because Jalen Milroe was a raw talent, and that is the perfect talent to draft in this situation. Because at this point, we know we're not contending this year.
I'm about to.
Who is Tyler Sow? And why did the Saints just pick him up? Why did the Saints just draft him over Shedeur? So they picked a quarterback, but they picked Tyler who? From Louisville? Say all you want about Shedeur. Oh, he played in Colorado and blah, blah, blah. So we pick a Louisville quarterback. Louisville had an all right season. Shedeur was a top 5 Heisman candidate. And we're going to take who? This franchise is cooked, bro. I'm officially I'm a Cardinals fan now. I can't lie. I'm officially a Cardinals fan. I don't own the Saints. I don't claim the Saints.
No. The New Orleans Saints in the second round selected Tyler Shugg, the 26-year-old quarterback out of Louisville. Now, let me tell you why this pick is stupid. Because drafting Tyler Shugg basically says, we are going to be ready to compete within the next 4 years. That's just not fucking true. There is no universe where the Saints are ready to compete for a Super Bowl in the next 4 years. So unless you're telling me that they are planning to draft a 26-year-old quarterback so that they compete in his 30s, if you're telling me they're drafting a quarterback to compete in his 30s, not in his 20s, where most quarterbacks win their Super Bowls, and then they don't really get to, they're not more likely to win after that. No, they win their Super Bowls in their mid-20s, maybe even late 20s, unless you're Tom Brady, Peyton Manning that 1 year. But, you don't necessarily win rings when you're in your 30s because your body starts to deteriorate. You're just not the same athlete you used to be. And especially when you've had wear and tear at the college level since you were 18. So he spent 8 years. It's not like he's not like a late bloomer. No, he spent 8 years playing college ball. His body is deteriorating at the same pace, which means basically, compared to Jalen Murrow, he has 4 years of the wear and tear on his body. Why would you draft him in a situation where he is not winning anytime soon? Basically, we just wasted a pick. Why are we drafting a guy who's not going to be able to do anything for us until he's 30? That just doesn't make sense. But you know what? Whatever, Let's start the 2025 season. At this point in time, my expectations are extremely low. They can't get any lower. They can't get lower than them, right? All I want was for the New Orleans Saints to compete. They don't got to win. They just got to compete. I just want to see heart out there on the field. I want to see touchdown score. So let's talk about it. Because see, if you watch the G. and Jones weekly reviews, if you watch this week, you would notice that we did not talk about Saints Seahawks. That's because this video was to be made. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm not gonna spend my time talking about Seahawks Saints on that when I can do this right now and tear into not only this front office but this fan base into blindly believing that we're gonna compete with Spencer Rattler. I knew from the beginning this was a bad idea, and now it's just continuing to be hammered in. I've never been proven right so bad and continue to be proven right. This is the most proven right I've ever been. Spencer Rattler has yet to win a game as a starter, by the way. And for some odd reason, the Saints fans still believe that he's the guy. No, he's not the guy. He's not a guy. He's not your guy. He's not my guy. He's just guy. I don't know why. I don't know who thought that he was the guy. I don't know who thought. I don't know. And the only reason that this thought process is coming through Saints fans' heads is because he's not throwing a copious amount of interceptions, which means that obviously he's not the problem. He's not turning the ball over. The problem is he's not turning the ball over. He can't even get the ball to the fucking receivers. The Saints right now, they don't need a game manager. They need a game changer. They need a playmaker. They need a guy who's going to run around and try his damnedest to make the play. I wonder who that describes. Someone who's going to throw that ball, someone who's going to move around if needed, and somebody who's going to force the play, even if it doesn't, necessarily make sense. I wonder who that describes. Look, I understand if you don't like Shadir Sanders. I don't. But if you think he's overly arrogant, guess what? That's exactly what the Saints locker room needed right now. They didn't need a guy who's going to sit there in the corner and, guys, let's go out there and try our best, man. No, they needed a guy who's going to get in that huddle like Drew Brees did. They needed a guy who was going to do the 2011 Madden opening. You remember that? You like that, Saints fans? That was cool. That was nice and cool. Guess what? Spencer Rattler's not going to fucking do that. Spencer Rattler's not giving the pregame speech. He's not hyping up the troops. He's just sitting there like a good boy in the pocket and waiting to get demolished by the defensive line. At this point in time, the Saints just need somebody who brings energy to the table. They need somebody who's going to get the locker room hype. They need a Baker Mayfield out there. They need a Drew Brees. They need even a Jay Cutler. They just need somebody who's going to go out there, make the plays when necessary, and even put his shoulder down when he has to. They need a quarterback that's going to inspire confidence in the team. Spencer Rattler does not do that. When the team's down, he's down. Oh shit, he's down. He doesn't elevate the team. He doesn't decrease the team. He just keeps the team where they are. That's not what the quarterback needs to do right now when we're ass. The quarterback does not need to keep everybody feeling ass. We're already ass. There's enough ass going around. God, I wanted this video to be angry. I wanted to yell more in this video, but I just don't feel like it. because the Saints don't deserve it. And, you know, to end this big old rant, to end this big story, I'm going to say this. The Saints aren't going to win this season. The Saints aren't going to draft a quarterback next year. And if they do, they're going to draft him in the second or third round. They're not going to draft a first-round quarterback because guess what? This draft class, as it's looking right now, is looking very weak, significantly weaker than the past. Some of the top quarterbacks that we thought were going to be some of the top guys in the draft are looking very suspect, very questionable, and probably shouldn't be drafted, at least in high positions. So now guess what? We're stuck in a situation where we're broke, we're ass, and we have no future. So a lot of guys are just going to be wasted. Chris Olave, wasted. Kelvin Banks, he's going to be wasted. We drafted him. He's going to be wasted. You want to know why? Because he's not going to mean, his play is not going to mean anything. Kool-Aid McKinstry, wasted. Fuaga, wasted. Trevor Penning, wasted. Alontae Taylor, wasted. Pete Warner, wasted. Paulson Adebo, wasted. All these guys are going to be wasted. I don't know why the Saints were so concerned when drafting Cameron Jordan's replacement, because respectfully, in the most respectful way possible, I love Cameron Jordan, but in the most respectful way possible, he wasn't there when we won a Super Bowl, and he hasn't won one. You know who has? You know who needed to be replaced? Who won a Super Bowl? I wonder, I ponder, I question. Who was the guy who won a Super Bowl with the Saints? I'm shooting blanks, guys. No idea. Who is the greatest quarterback in the Saints franchise history? Hold on. Goddamn. It was, what's that guy? Manning? It's somewhere in there, you know what I'm saying? Because obviously, we're looking to replace guys who just don't matter. The last quarterback we drafted in the first round was Arch Manning. We have won one Super Bowl. We have not deserved that level of arrogance. I don't know why we have it. We haven't earned it. We don't deserve it. So to end this all off, Saints, clean it up. And if you watch this entire video, leave a like on the video. And I have nothing more to say. And with that, I'm out.